There's some new news coming out about the Pittsburgh Steelers' interest with their 17th pick in the NFL draft. And with 14 days until pick one, you got to think what's real, what's not real, and what makes sense for the Pittsburgh Steelers. How much can change in just 2 weeks? Let's get into all of it. What's going on, everybody? I'm Noah Strackmine. Thank you for jumping on to Steelers to Go, your daily to-go cup of Pittsburgh Steelers news and analysis. Find us on youtube.com/allsteelerstalk and subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. And today, we're talking about changes to the Pittsburgh Steelers' first-round love interest. Coming into this week, there's been plenty of news, and there were names to watch. DeJuan Jones was obviously one of them. Keely Ringo's another. Joey Porter Jr. is the hottest topic of conversation when it comes to Pittsburgh Steelers fans. And then obviously names like Jordan Addison is a fan favorite. Deontay Banks is up there. Christian Gonzalez, Devin Witherspoon, Paris Johnson, Broderick Jones. There are a million names that the Pittsburgh Steelers can be approaching, on top of the fact that they have spoken, or at least reportedly spoken, to the Chicago Bears about potentially moving up to pick 9. So, what's the new news? What is the recent development that makes you think, well, maybe our indication is just a little bit off and we need to readjust it? They both come from Tony Pauline, who said that the Pittsburgh Steelers are currently a little bit upset and turned off by DeJuan Jones, Ohio State right tackle, because he did not work out or measure at his pro day. And I think the measurement's the big one. You talk about DeJuan Jones and you think, okay, he's 6'5", 375 pounds. There's really nothing crazy that comes out of this guy when you look at him. Well, you can't expect high things when it comes to his athletic numbers. He did run a 5'1", 40-yard dash at the NFL Combine, and you got to feel really good about that one. But overall, a guy that big isn't going to be super athletic, and he's not going to test super athletically, so it doesn't make a lot of sense for him to hurt his draft stock by showing everybody, hey guys, I really can't move that well. It doesn't do any benefits. And during this time of the draft period, you're going to get a lot of agents, a lot of teams, a lot of player representatives who are like, hey, look it, you got to take some time and you got to only do this because this is going to hurt your draft stock. You can't do this because this is going to hurt your draft stock. This is where you're sitting. How comfortable are you with this position? And I think with DeJuan Jones, it's also come back to hurt him. So DeJuan Jones' story or saga or whatever started at the Senior Bowl when he practiced for one day, stole the show, had a phenomenal day of practice, and then decided to, well, leave. There were a bunch of rumors floating out there, from he had a concussion to he hurt his wrist. He just up and left. The Senior Bowl called him back to make sure that it didn't look terrible. He didn't tell anybody that he was leaving. Somebody just told him, oh, well, he's probably a first-round draft pick. And he said, well, that's enough for me. I don't need to be here anymore. Lots of stories. And it kind of rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. Then he goes to the NFL Combine. He measures in 375 pounds. You got to feel really good about that if you're a team looking at him. And I think it somewhat solidified him as a potential first-round pick. And I think his agent and him both decided, hey, I feel really good about teetering on that line. As a player who probably shouldn't be a first-round pick, and who in, years past with better draft classes when it came to offensive tackles, you have to imagine that maybe he's a second rounder instead of a first. And if you're on that line, if you're a player who doesn't really know what the future holds for him, but you're getting a little bit of an upside just because of who you are, what position you played, and how big you are, well, you're going to take advantage of that. I did that, but he pushed it just a little bit too far. Now, reports say, and this is where Pauline comes in, saying that the Steelers were turned off by DeJuan Jones when he decided not to work out or measure at his pro day. That was the big one. How much weight did he put on after the NFL Combine? The Pittsburgh Steelers wanted to know. They wanted to know whether or not this guy ran a 5'1" because he dropped 20 pounds. And I'm sure that they have a number about where they would like him to play at if they drafted him in the NFL draft. If they brought in DeJuan Jones and they looked at him as a potential starter, there's certainly a weight that they will tell him, hey, how comfortable are you to get down or move up to this weight? Guy his size, you got to imagine it's coming down. And there's been questions like that before. You look back to the Steelers' our last right tackle in Zach Banner, who, when he came into Pittsburgh, was a massive 400-pound human, and they asked him to shed some weight so that he's able to play. They're probably going to do the same with DeJuan Jones. So They're turned off by DeJuan Jones, a guy who many at one point expected to be the 17th pick in the draft, a guy that Patrick Peterson, the Steelers' new cornerback, said just days ago that that's who he would draft at 17 if he was the Pittsburgh Steelers, a big name revolving around this team. Then there's another report. That report is that the Pittsburgh Steelers absolutely love Maryland cornerback Deontay Banks, and that possibly they'll draft him over Joey Porter Jr. as the third corner in the NFL draft. The question is, the Washington Commanders, who picked before them, also love Deontay Banks and could draft him as well over Porter. And that leaves a giant question mark for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But this is where it gets very interesting. Banks is a dude who, yes, the opposite of DeJuan Jones. You're drafting DeJuan Jones because of his upside, but also just because of his size and what he could probably be capable of doing on top of what he's already shown, which isn't a ton, but he's had a decent college career. It was always just a good college career, nothing crazy, nothing like his running mate Paris Johnson Jr., whereas Deontay Banks didn't really have a phenomenal college career. Deontay Banks had really 1 year of playing experience because he got hit with the COVID year. Then he got a shoulder injury. He came back last season. He had just one interception. Nothing crazy. It wasn't a career that you walked away and said, oh, okay, well, this guy is a first-round draft pick. Then he runs a 4.35 at the NFL Combine, and people start talking about him moving up boards. And then you watch the film, and the film shows you that this guy's got all the capabilities in the world. He hangs with some of the best in college football. He's able to do everything that you would like him to do as a cornerback, and he's a developmental piece. So while you're hoping that DeJuan Jones could take it up a notch, you're hoping with Deontay Banks that he turns into what he's already shown. That's the difference between the two. And if the Steelers are looking at this and they're evaluating things, I'm not going to rule DeJuan Jones out of any conversation with the Steelers in their 17th pick in the draft. I'm just not. But if I had to guess what direction the Pittsburgh Steelers are trying to go or likely going with their first round pick when it comes to this news, just involving this news. And, you know, a week ago we talked about, or a couple of days ago, we talked about how they've been in contact with the Chicago Bears, and maybe that's a move that they're willing to make. And then Mel Kiper Jr. dropped his first round mock draft, and the Steelers went with Zay Flowers, a wide receiver out of Boston College. And you had to talk about, well, maybe they're interested in wide receiver. There's a million reports that come out every single day, and there's going to be a million more reports that come out on a daily basis. That's just what we're doing. It's the NFL draft season. We're 2 weeks away from the first pick in the draft. And in those 2 weeks, people are going to toss every crazy story out there, every crazy report out there that they could possibly get their hands on. But truthfully, nobody knows anything. This is what we do know. The Pittsburgh Steelers are a team that love potential, man. They love potential. They love a guy who, doesn't really do a whole ton in college, but has some serious upside in the NFL and could turn all these athletic traits into something crazy. That's what they love. That fits the bill with both guys. It fits the bill with DeJuan Jones, and it fits the bill with Deontay Banks. So really, it's just a matter of what position do they view higher? What player do they think has more upside? I personally think that Deontay Banks has more upside, and I think that Deontay Banks is possibly a future star corner in the NFL and is capable of doing everything. But you're 28 of 30 pre-draft visits in. You look at your pro day visits, you look at your NFL Combine interviews, you just mash together what the Pittsburgh Steelers have shown and done throughout this draft process and their interest in the certain positions. Corner has held a grip on this team the entire time, continued to the entire time. And they've looked at a number of options. They've looked at their top picks. They've looked at their players that they could trade into the top 10 for. They've looked at their 17th pick. They've looked at guys at the end of the first round. They've looked at guys at the end of the second round. They've looked at guys in the 7th round. They've done their homework on corner. They haven't necessarily done their homework on left tackle. They've looked at offensive tackle, and they've brought in guys that, impressive, but likely second round picks. Those guys that are tweeners, like the Antonio Harrison or Antoine Harrison, or DeJuan Jones, the players that probably will be there at 32, but there's question marks. I don't think Deontay Banks makes it to 32. And if I had to guess, the Pittsburgh Steelers know that as well. And if there are teams that love him and the Steelers want to take advantage of a corner before the other teams, one of them being the Baltimore Ravens, take advantage of a corner, I think they're going to do so. They don't want to lose a star to the Baltimore Ravens. And that doesn't play a major role, but it's definitely going to play a little bit of one. You don't want your AFC North rivals to get better off of a mistake that you made. So if I had to guess, Deontay Banks holds a little bit of an advantage. And if I had to truly determine and truly take a prediction here, and that's all that is just a prediction. We don't know anything. I just got done saying that. It's that the Pittsburgh Steelers look at a guy like Deontay Banks with minimum playing time, a couple of tough years, and question marks. Definitely question marks, but a ton of upside. And the ability to do everything in this league as long as he develops it into fine-tuned form, superstar form, with Patrick Peterson leading the way. Whereas in DeJuan Jones has question marks about whether or not he could take what we've seen and make it better. And you're going to take a flyer on a guy like Banks because you could mold Banks. Maybe DeJuan Jones has already been molded. It's a big question. And I think it's one that the Pittsburgh Steelers, even if we don't know, have an answer on. All Steelers Talk has officially launched their own clothing brand, Black and Gold Apparel, now available on bonfire.com or at the shop tab at our YouTube page. Your new favorite place for Steelers t-shirts, sweatshirts, and crew necks, now out, now available in multiple designs, including some of my favorites, Kenny Comeback, Mute, and Kenny DeGeorge. Check them all out at bonfire.com or on the shop tab at our YouTube page.